All right, this video is going to be about me sort of breaking down my personal experience of the job economy. Okay. So I was on unemployment for a year because of the so-called pandemic. And basically coming back into the workforce, if I'm not making over 500 out the door after taxes, shit's pointless. And I mean, I'm making at the most, with even a really good job, about $1,000 every 2 weeks. With unemployment, I'm making about $1,000 and $1,040 and $1,040. So $1,040, I should say. Sorry. Now, that's every 2 weeks, about $2,080 a month on unemployment. Now, that's with no effort. Okay? And so if I'm going to be putting in effort and working at a job, I should be expecting to be getting more than unemployment, just as a basic reality. Now, granted, that's partially because of the federal aspect of this. Now, if I was on state unemployment, I'd be getting 200 some dollars. So it is considerably more than the state unemployment, but with the federal unemployment, it's like $520. Now, that being the case, federal income tax is so considerably high that even if I am making $800, 200 of that shit, just about 180, 190, some shit like that, is going to taxes. So I'm getting about $619 out of every $800 that I would make. And that's if I'm lucky. I'm in car sales right now, and I'm trying to get into another job for a more regular pay rate that's more averaging higher, basically. Because right now it's at 300 some, 390 some if I don't make a sale that week. That's the base pay. And if I do make sales, it's solely on commission. So if I only made 2 sales that week, then I'm dick fucked, basically. And I don't want to be dick fucked. Sorry. And, I realize that there are certain jobs out there that are like $15 an hour. And that's crazy that that's the case, but that's all well and good. I'm glad that that's possible for people. The issue is that basically, and I have a daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter, a girl that I call my daughter. And I love her. And I want to be able to spend time with her. I want to be able to be a father to her and raise her. And what I'm coming to realize is basically due to the economy and the jobs market and everything, I'm a fucking idiot for thinking that I have the right to raise my child. Who the fuck are you? You're just some guy. You're just some fucking worker. You think that you should be able to work and have time to raise your kid? You're fucking delusional, dude. Who are you? The only people who are able to have that kind of freedom have boatloads of money and don't even give a shit, don't want to raise their kid anyway. They have hired professionals to raise their kids. Or they're making enough money to where the mothers raise their kids, which is a part of the whole fucking problem of our culture, because the fathers aren't there to raise their children anymore. And so you have what's considered toxic masculinity, but really it's a lack of masculinity in our culture, is the reality. Fathers aren't there for their aren't there for their children, and therefore there's no discipline, there's no voice of logic. There's a lot of feelings. There's a lot of feelings out there, not a lot of logic, not a lot of mentality, like mental capacity, intelligence, whatever. So that's the fucked up part about all this. Is like, I'm coming to realize that the economy itself, and really what the term economy originally meant through Aristotle, was household management. And the truth of the matter is that the family unit originally was sort of the atomic structure of the cultural system, of the organism that we consider to be culture. That is the foundation of it all. And if that breaks down because people aren't able to actually raise their children properly, and so people end up coming up through this culture being completely disconnected from the human beings that are around them, between that and the education system that is a complete abysmal failure, because all it is memorized information being crammed down children's throats, guess what the result is? Guess what the outcome of that machine happens to be? Psychological dysfunction and mass shootings. Okay? You have the mass shootings and the school shootings and the shit like that. That's the result. People are why does this keep happening? That's why it keeps happening. It's pretty simple. It's pretty basic shit. But nobody wants to face the hard facts of how to solve those problems. And how to solve those problems happens to be freeing humanity from the money game struggle. Period. And it's possible. We've proven that it's possible by having basically everyone on a universal basic income at this point through unemployment. It's possible. It's fucking possible. The problem is the government that we have is beholden to its own agendas, namely war and conflict, instead of freeing its population from the corporate masters and oligarchs who happen to be running the show behind the scenes and have been doing so, gradually increasing their influence over time, but have been doing so for over 100 years, since the Federal Reserve was established, essentially. I mean, this is our reality. And it's troubling to me now, being forced into this situation because of having a child, that having a child and realizing the limitations that are set upon me and I'm a single father, because the reality is that, you know, the sexual economy of our cultural societal reality is also fucked. Women are completely fucked in the head and think that, you know, having kids out of wedlock is perfectly okay. Lying about and manipulating their status in society is okay. Lying about the men who are, I'm not even necessarily the biological father, but I'm there to raise the kid because I have fucking moral values that go beyond just, you know, being a deadbeat and shit. Which, ironically enough, I'm also the father, not the father, but the daddy to another kid that this same woman has produced from another guy. And I'm the daddy to that additional child because he won't be. Because he doesn't know how to be. And that's the other aspect of this norm in our society is deadbeat fathers who can't fucking understand the value and the necessity of being there for their kid. They would rather be playing video games and trying to fuck chicks than they would to raise a child in our society. That ain't me though. That isn't me. But you know what? Because I have to work, I can't raise the kids. Even though she's not capable of doing it because she's overburdened with the with the reality of her being so stupid that she's, producing all these kids and not raising them, not being able to be a parent to them. And so that's the reality of the feminine, and the reality of the masculine is these guys are fucking deadbeat loser pieces of shit that can't fucking raise their kids right. So, and that's a harsh reality. I don't want that to be the reality, but that's the reality. That is the true nature of the economy, the household management of our culture and our society. And I want to be able to raise the kids. I want to be able to be a father and be able to actually have an impact on the future of our society by being there for these kids, but I have to work. And I'm only going to be able to have maybe 2 weekends out of the month where I'm going to be able to see my kid because I have to work. And I could do a part-time job if I'm living with my family and not having to pay bills, which is just not an option for me now. So the harsh reality is I have to be, working a hell of a lot more than is impactful for my kid's life. And the only way that I could possibly not be in that situation and be an effective father and be a truly good parent is if I have so much money that I wouldn't even waste my time being a parent anyway, because I could just hire people. That's what I'm sort of saying, is that even the people who could raise their own kids don't, because it's unnecessary for them to have to. They would rather be spending their time making even more money. It's a tragedy. So who's raising the kids? The state. And guess what the education, the school for them is? It's indoctrination to a fucking communist, technocratic system of obey your rulers. Stand in allegiance to the flag. And all that nonsense, which is basically Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! That's essentially what that ends up being. Grooming them for the future dictatorship. That's basically what education amounts to today. And all the older folks know what the fuck I'm talking about because they've seen the progression. That's why the conservative folks are the people are more my people now than the liberals are. Because the liberal people have been brainwashed and conditioned to believe in that dictatorship of technocracy. And the conservative people see through the illusory bullshit of that promise. Because they've heard that promise before. And they know, historically speaking, anyone making that kind of promise is usually the actual dictator, is usually the actual tyrant. So in any case, the only solution that I know of is basically to totally revolutionize the system. And I have ideas for how to do that. I've written about it in my book, Philosophia, with an EA at the end, not an IA. Like Isaac Newton had a book called Philosophia with an IA. Anyway, In that book, I talk about solutions, and the solution to the education system is to basically take it back, starting with the adults. Adults need to be educated first and foremost, and then we can start to educate the children. But we have to take it back from the state. The state should not have any role in education, and it's completely absurd that we've allowed it to be something of a federal government agency that then gets to create curriculums instead of it being something that we as a society get to determine. That's how society and civilization falls, is when the federal government starts to be able, when the dictator starts to be able to control the levers of education. So taking that back is a huge first step. That will be a victory only when enough people are capable of realizing the importance of education, not only for the children, but for themselves. That's huge. Secondly, when we recognize that the economic system that we're using is an abysmal failure, that it's not even a failure necessarily, but it is an abysmal curse, an enslaving system that needs to be radically transformed, and that in the 21st century we have an obligation to emancipate our population globally from the golden chains of money. And then finally, change the political system to be basically a minarchy, where we don't have any government except what is absolutely necessary, and we govern ourselves for the most part through participatory economics, in which basically the whole structure of corporations and so on is restructured to where everyone plays every role in the organization of society, being both the janitor and the CEO. Eventually, everybody plays a kind of musical chairs in the organization to where everyone's been the janitor and everyone's been the CEO, and they're all trained perfectly well in how to do that. And every corporation has the same sort of cycle of people shifting from one role to another so that everybody knows how the whole fucking thing works 100%. And everybody gets paid based on the value of the corporation as a total. Such that, and not only that, but not having money as a system, you're not using money at that point, you're using sort of a valuation through basically just trust, and everything is sort of an access-based system as opposed to personal ownership, excluding things like property in terms of dwelling places and maybe certain forms of transportation. But otherwise, for the most part, socialized vehicular transportation, socialized sort of the necessities of life, food, clothing, shelter, certain forms of transportation, and information should be free. Information should be free. So should art and these kind of things, but everybody gets access as just a basic form of life. Your participation in the project of civilization is the currency of the new sort of economic model that I would propose. And that's the Star Trek future. That's how we get to the level 1 civilization. That's how we get to the level 1 civilization. It's not going to happen through any other sort of, you can take tiny little steps in that direction. It's not going to happen through cryptocurrencies, because that's a vapor in what I would consider to be the process of this whole thing. And it's a necessary step to realizing that the real value being transferred is not a tangible thing, but rather a transferable reciprocal trust of action and participation between citizens. You don't need to have a medium of exchange for that. It's an unnecessary medium that doesn't need to exist. If we trust one another and love our neighbor as ourselves, truly that's all just unnecessary bullshit. Pardon my French. It's all unnecessary. We can do without it. We can actually do a hell of a lot more without it. But we've been programmed and indoctrinated to believing that this whole thing is necessary in order to prop up plutocrats who own us through the golden shackles of money. Free yourself, free your children, and free their children from the shackles of monetary slavery. Love and appreciation, everybody. Peace.